Good morning. We are a peculiar people. So I've been working in the studio shed conversion and working on the vinyl flooring. And I've put a couple borders in here. Underneath the cabinet is done. Actually, I got one more piece right there. And then I'm going to come over here and finish this and then go into the bathroom. I gotta cut the door down for the closet a bit. So normally, this would probably be a one-day job for a professional, which I am not, although it went together pretty easily, praise God. And so, there's two kinds of things, right? I call it a broad sword and a fine scalpel. And people are suited for different things, right? Like, give me a sledgehammer. I demoed the house that we live in. My wife helped me a little bit in the cleanup process, but for the most part, I demoed it myself. Took the walls and ceilings down, opened up all the interior walls, and that's kind of my element, right? I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist. You just grab a sledgehammer, a pry bar, and a hammer, and you go to town. And in a few days, we had a gutted house. That's a broadsword, right? I'm well suited for that. I feel more in my element doing that than I do trimming out these windows, which I've yet to do, but I'm going to try. And doors, right? And baseboards and everything else. And so that's more of a fine scalpel work. It requires a little more attention to detail, a little more patience. There's a methodology to it. And the flooring is kind of the same way. It's easy on paper, but when you start to, figure out how pieces are going to fit together, for instance, I started in that corner and I worked my way across. So that was my first cut around that jamb. That was pretty easy. My second cut, pretty easy. Now, when I came out this way, I came out on this piece where this wall is, and it had to be cut. So then it ends up, here, and I got to line all that up. And so that's kind of the fine scalpel part of it. And honestly, I'm a little out of my element doing that. So, my wife, God bless her, she prayed. She prayed for me. She prayed that I wouldn't get hurt. She prayed that I would get through the project without any problems. And as I'm out here working, she's doing what she's doing inside, and periodically she stops and she prays. And so I believe that got me through it, because if I was to do this without the help of God, there's at least 187 ways that it could go wrong. And, I'm on my third day today, right? Like I said, this should be a one-day job for a professional. I may finish today. I may not. So 3, maybe going into the 4th day a little bit. Probably wrap it up in 3 days. But because I have issues with my knees and with my back, being on my hands and knees for a long period of time it's not conducive to my physical abilities. And so I put in 4 or 5 pieces, and I sit down in the chair, I take a sip of water, and I look out over the field before me, what needs to be done. And in doing that, I've actually found several problems, right? So when I was over there, sitting in that corner, looking back toward the closet, I saw that, there was like little gaps. And so I was able to pull them together. Now, had I been in perfect health, I would have just been on my hands and knees. Being the broadsword that I am, I would have been just going to town. And I would have got probably to this point in a day and looked back and then saw those gaps. And then it's too late to correct them without pulling the whole thing up, which, trust me, I'm not doing that. So by having those physical ailments, physical disabilities, God used that. He used it to allow me to slow down and to sit back and to look and to ponder and to think every step of the way. Put down 5 boards, look at it. What could be done? Well, maybe look, this gap's a little bigger. I could pull it in. I could do this. And then there's other things too. Like, for instance, when I got a good third of the way through, like maybe to the right side of that window, I looked over and I realized, and I tried to lay it out so where the pieces, we had 2 cuts, so that's like a 4-inch. They're 7 and a hair wide, 7 1/8 wide, 7 1/4 wide. That piece against the wall is approximately 4 inches. The way I laid it out in the room, I wanted to come as close to a full piece on this side. Well, I miscalculated because it ended up being 3 inches. But that's okay, as long as I didn't end up with a little sliver. That was kind of my goal. After I got over here and I realized what I probably could have did is just left a full piece there, and then I would have come here. Or if I really was on with my math, I would have started with a 3-inch piece. I would have started with that piece in the back wall and then ended up with the wider piece, the 4-inch piece. Is it a big deal? No, not really. But as I sat here and I looked out at it, I thought to myself, because I know from building the closet and the bathroom walls and the cabinets, that the building has settled. It's just on blocks, right? And that knocked it out of square a little. And as I think about it now, I think really more accurately, it knocked it out of plumb more than square, which was good for the floor, because square would have been an issue. But as I'm sitting here and I'm looking at that, I'm like, now I'm a third of the way through. I'm just about to where that closet is, and the right side of the closet. And I'm thinking, boy, what's going to happen when I work my way over here and it ends up out of square and it ends up like being 2 inches there, and 4 inches over there or whatever. You would see that angle on that last piece. And so now, at that point, there's absolutely really nothing I could do about that other than ripping up everything I did and starting over. But again, with starting in the back corner, I have to pick one side, right? If I started in the front, then if it's out of square, then the angle piece would have been in back, which probably would have been better, but it was easier to work backward, and they actually recommend starting in the left and working toward the door, so that's what I did. But I say all that to say, that was something that was really out of my control, right? But my wife, being the kind of woman that prays for me every step of the way, prayed for it to work out, and it did, and I didn't have to do anything. I got a third of the way through, and I realized it's going to be what it is, and there's nothing I could do about it. And if it's out of square, and I got a strip that's on an angle, yeah, it'd be better to have it in back, but I'm already past that point where I can decide, and I'm going to have to live with it. And as it turned out, it ends up being a quarter out of square. It's like 3 and a hair there and 3 and a quarter heavy over there. So you'll never even notice it on the naked eye. And so, that's God's provision, right? That's God taking care of us. That's answered prayer. That's my wife calling on God in prayer and saying, help us through this. And I can see that in every step of the way. This is only the second time I put my hands on this vinyl tile. I helped a friend of mine do a bathroom in a church about a month and a half ago. And, we ran into some issues that I didn't know how to solve. Now, he was a little more experienced, and it came out well because he knew what to do. And I remember thinking, like, man, how do you fix that? How do you fix this? And every step of the way. But he was there, and he was able, he knew. So we got through it. So I'm doing this by myself, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do when I come to those issues? how am I gonna, it requires taking pieces up and working it back and doing all kinds of stuff. And then broadsword, right? I don't have the agave for that. I don't have the patience. I don't have the attention to detail. And so God took care of it. He said, you just go in there and cut the pieces, and I'll take care of the rest. And he did. And really, it took me time because of my knees and my back. It took a couple days longer than it should have. But this thing went off without one problem. The pieces just went down. Some of them needed a little more finesse to get them to lock in. But honestly, as I said, there's 187 ways this thing could have went wrong. And there's only one way that it could go all right. And that's with God. So God gets the honor and the glory for everything we do. And I think it's going to be a beautiful building. It's going to be a study, place to come and quietly read and study, and maybe I'll do video stuff out here, whatever. And we're one step closer. Thanks for watching. God bless you.